Hey, so glad that you can come and join me. I'm actually in the middle of eating dinner. I don't know if I can even really show you, but it's like, I think I want to put it in the picture in the thumbnail for this video for today of what it looked like before I started eating it. Um, but it's actually quite late for me to be eating, but I had a late start to the day. Yeah, I'm looking a little disheveled because I went out this evening, and did my walk for today. And what I usually try to do on most days is I try to get 10,000 steps in. Um, and if I don't do the 10,000 steps, I get close to it as possible, somewhere between 5 and 10,000 steps. Um, and so, yeah, so I got home and was doing other stuff, admin stuff, and made my food because making my food is important to me. That's what I do to be able to stay healthy. The two things that I must do every day is do some sort of movement, as well as do, make my food. So in general, I eat 2 meals a day, and it's usually very high in fiber, fruits, vegetables, both of those meals. Um, let's see. And so to the point of the video today, I was asking the question, excuse me, I was asking the question of what is it that you actually need to be able to thrive? Um, and if you ask yourself this question, this is actually a question that can change the trajectory of your next decade. Okay? What do you need to thrive? I think that we ask the wrong questions about what we're doing with our life, the projects that we're working on, the things that we need to do. Um, for some people, we don't plan from the best possible scenario standpoint. We sort of plan from a point of, what it is that we have already done. We plan from a place of the evidence of what it is that we've already done before, um, or what we might see other people around us doing. And if you're not surrounded by people who are doing big things, then, by default, you're only going usually as far as your peer group. Um, and so one of the most important questions I'm always asking myself over the past few years since I moved abroad. If you don't know, my name is Halana Black. I moved abroad in 2018. I left the United States, and since then have lived in 10 countries. Right now, I live in um, Mexico, in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and I'm planning a move to build the creative studio of my dreams in San Miguel de Allende. That's in central Mexico. And I want to be surrounded by clients and friends and peers who are interested in living their most creative, most abundant life. And so, in doing so, we have to ask ourselves different questions if that is what you want to be able to create for yourself. And so, one of the most important questions I've asked over the past few years is what do I need to thrive? Not what I need to survive, not what I need to get by, but actually really thrive. And my life overseas has really given me something that a lot of people in the world rarely get. And I am totally, um, I recognize this, that I live a charmed life. Um, the way that I get to live is not how a lot of people live. However, this life is not impossible. You can do what I do and have done during the past 7, almost 8 years now. Um, you can do what I do and sort of hop around from one country to another over time. I tend to be a slow traveler, meaning that I stay in one place from several months to even several years. Um, or you can do some version of that, of something else, whatever works for you in your life and your situation. But I recognize that I have the ability to experiment with my life because of how I've organized it. Um, so living abroad is a laboratory for life. It's like how I really think of what it is that I'm doing. Since leaving the US in 2018, I've lived in multiple countries in many different types of environments. And what that has allowed me to do is try on different versions of life, things that I have always sort of had in the back of my mind. It would be really nice. What would it be like to be able to live in the desert? What would it be like to live at the beach? What if I lived a rural life? And so you get to ask yourself questions like that. I get to try on different climates and weather. Do I need a super hot environment like what I have now in Playa del Carmen? Um, Half the year, it's so freaking hot, I can't stand it, which is why I feel like, my time here is coming to an end. My time here is coming to an end. I really cannot do another hot season. I just can't. Um, and what I learned while I was in Rwanda actually is that I really love a more temperate climate. Everybody thinks that the whole of Africa is hot all the time, and that's not actually true. Rwanda, because it's very high up in the mountains, um, you know, it's mostly spring weather for the most of the year. I won't say it gets cold. If you ask local people, of course they will say there are seasons of cold, but it's not. If you've ever lived, like I'm from New Jersey in the US, I understand cold, and I've traveled to Canada, as far north as Canada, in April. And that is a different type of cold that I never got to experience when, growing up in New Jersey. But I understand that these different types of weathers, I got to be able to try it on for a season or two to be able to figure out what it is that I like in this season of life. There was a time when I absolutely loved hot weather, beaches. I loved it all the time. I was like, oh, I can do this all the time. But now at 48, I don't need to be hot. Just don't need to be hot all the time. It doesn't work anymore. Same in the opposite. I don't need freezing cold weather either. I, grew up in cold weather. I don't necessarily like that either. I need something in the middle. And we can sort of leave this hot beach weather for vacation. Fair enough, right? I get to try on different rhythms of life. Do I love a fast city pace? Um, I've lived in New York City before. I don't love it. It moves a little too fast. Plus the environment is filthy. I'm sorry, New York, but you know what you are. It's a filthy place. Sure, it has access to all sorts of any and everything that you would ever love. Food, cultures, art, various types of art, all sorts of things going on in all times of the year. Um, but I can't take the pace, not at this stage of life. Maybe if I was 22, that might be different. But again, at 48, I'm not really all that interested in having access to that 24/7. Um, let's see. Party environments versus quiet environments. Um, I won't call it Playa del Carmen here in Mexico. I won't call it a party environment. It's not, I guess it depends on what it is that you're looking for. Playa can be a highly party environment, but it can also For some people, it's a very peaceful environment. People come here because they want to be close to the beach. And it's often because wherever it is that they came from in the world didn't have the beach. So, I totally understand the draw to the beach here. Ocean views versus city views. Some people live for a good city view. When I was in Rwanda, I learned that I really love having a view of mountains and hills and greenery and, sunrises and sunsets. Uh, You know, um, However, I have friends who live in Mexico City. Big, huge city. It has a lot going on. I wouldn't say it's as fast as New York City. Um, and I think depending on where you live in the city, some of it is charming, but not enough for me. Like if you get an apartment with a so-called view, you get a cityscape view. It looks like it looks like a bunch of boxes that need to be cleaned. I don't want to be looking at your dirty rooftops. That's not that's not peaceful for me. But some people love that. They absolutely love a good rooftop city view, if that feels good to them. So, living in a creative city versus a resort town. Um, and because I've often rented furnished apartments, that I didn't have to invest thousands of dollars in furniture or long-term commitments. I think that also matters. So I get to be able to try out for months or even years, different types of apartment setups. I've had um, apartments that were sort of scantily furnished, others that had different types of, comfort, like handmade furniture versus, more commercial furniture that, the furniture that I had when I was in Rwanda at my last apartment that I stayed. I think I was there maybe almost a couple of years. That furniture was actually flown in from Italy. The guy told me. But you can also get some local handmade furniture, which for me tends to be a little less comfortable. I don't want that. Not that I have to have furniture flown in from Italy. I think that's a bit much, but I enjoyed what it is that I had. And of course, you can actually work with people to be able to get things that are more or less to your comfort level, depending on how much you're willing to pay for. So I want to say that as well. Um, and so what I've had over the last few years of living abroad, was that I've had opportunities to be able to live somewhere and sort of observe myself in these environments. And that kind of experimentation in my life actually teaches me a lot about who I am, what I need, um, and what's sort of nice to have. It's I I want to be able to have all of what I need all the time, of course. Um, but it's the niceties of life are great too. And I think for a lot of us, Black women, if you ever, Black women, of course, but and really anybody who's grown up with a lack, you think, well, I have a roof, or you hear from your family a lot growing up, we put a roof over your head and there's food in the refrigerator and that's all you need. And that is the truth. Many people don't have that in this day and age. Um, but we don't have to sit with that only, you know? Like when I was in Rwanda, it was really nice. And even when I was in Asia, the access to fresh flowers was crazy. I used to get literally 4 dozens, two, three, 4 dozens of roses. Rwanda, for some reason, I don't know, it was hard to be able to find other types of flowers. They only had roses. And I like at one point I actually caught myself complaining. I was like, can I get something else other than roses? Which was ridiculous. I know, because it's roses and they were so beautiful. Like the petals on the roses were so thick and rich and they had such a perfume to it. I remember I had gotten one particular bunch of roses and it would, you could order it online or on your phone and it would actually bring it to the house. literally the price, 5, 10, 15 bucks, $20. If you spent $20 on some flowers, you were doing it up. You were getting 4 dozen, 5 dozen roses. And they were beautiful, different colors, pinks, yellows, reds, orange. Um, I think sometimes they would get ones, but they would get blue. And I don't know if they added stuff, like you can add dye to the water and the water comes up the stem and it colors the flower. You can get a white flower and you'll see like blue come up in the flowers, and they were so beautiful. Um, but it was nice to be able to have that. And so like flowers are not like I need flowers. I need flowers. Like they're not extra. Like I need to have, fresh flowers around me as much as I can get them. Now where I live now, the fresh flowers are not always as nice. Um, you know, they're not always as nice. You can go to the grocery store. There's a couple of other I found a couple of other flower shops where the price of the flowers are just a little bit ridiculous for what it is that they're offering. That's just my opinion. Um, but flowers are really beautiful. So when I can find a good, actually Walmart here actually has some nice flowers. I haven't been there to the Walmart in a minute. So I think maybe this coming weekend I will make a Walmart visit to see what I can find as far as flowers are concerned. Because I haven't bought flowers in a second or in a minute. But yeah, flowers are necessary to life for me. It's not something that I, that's just extra. Like you only give it to me on like you only get flowers on Valentine's Day. I don't want to live like that. I want nice things all the time. All the time. I want to be surrounded by nice things. I want to smell nice. I want to look nice. I want to have, my best clothes on a Tuesday morning to go grocery shopping. Like that's the type of life that I want to be able to live. I spend my money on the highest quality of foods, particularly the foods that I cook in my home. Um, because what you feed yourself matters. I'm not going to be eating chicken nuggets because they're cheap. I want the good, high quality organic meat if that's what I'm going to have. I always buy the best, the freshest of greens, um, carrots, all the vegetables and the fruit. I get the best. And it doesn't need to be expensive, which is part of the reason why I live outside of the United States, because folks in the US think that the good food is only in the better grocery stores, when really, if you have connections to farmers and things like that, excuse me, you can actually get, or even just go to international grocery stores. People sleep on the international grocery stores. When I learned that tip, I learned this tip years ago. When I first got married, I am no longer married, let me be clear. When I first got married many, many years ago, I was in my 20s. And he moved to the US from West Africa. And he was looking for food because the food that we were eating from just the regular, big box grocery stores, like it wasn't hitting on nothing. It didn't taste anything like what he was used to back home, particularly meat. It had a weird flavor. He was used to being able to, like, a big thing that I see on social media is for people to put chicken in a pot and let it make its own broth. Like that's what chicken is supposed to do. Lord God. Chicken is supposed to make its own broth. Like that's what it's supposed to do. But a lot of these chickens that you get in the States, you can put it in a pot and it don't make no juice, child. Don't make nothing. Don't make nothing. You're like, what the hell is this? And so I learned how to be able to feed myself the best food, is what it is that I'm saying, when I changed environments and have a different experience. And so what happens when you change environments? You start to notice things like what kind of pace your nervous system likes. what kind of pace your nervous system like? I like a nice, slow, medium pace. I don't necessarily need rural life. I've lived in rural spaces. I've lived in rural West Africa, um, and have done stints of rural living in probably all the countries that I've lived in. And while I think it's a great place to visit, a nice place to be able to take a good break, super slow all the time, living on a farm. I would love to be able to have a farm, but I'm not doing any of the farm work. Let me be like, I'm not a farmer. I'm not doing any of the farm work, but I would love to be able to have access to a place where I had a farm. You could pay local people to be workers, people who know the land, understand it. They are farmers through and through. You pay them a good salary. I have food. I'm only one person, at least right now. It's just me. I'm not looking to have any children. I would love to be able to be married one day. But he probably ain't gonna have small kids either. He might have a family, but they'll be older. Um, but yeah, like today it's just me. So if it's just me eating, I'm not gonna be eating all this food from the farm, so I can share it with the workers. And I don't know, maybe we can figure out some way to be able to sell, some things, whatever income comes from that, awesome. Um, but yeah, we can share the food, and I got access to fresh food. I eat, they eat, we all eat. But then I still have access to, a town where, there's art stuff going on. I need a museum exhibit. I need books. I need libraries. I need things going on, like, events. I love live music. Like, I need a place that has all that stuff going on. Good restaurants. Don't sleep on good restaurants. And good restaurants doesn't necessarily need to good restaurants doesn't necessarily need to mean, um, paying top dollar for a meal. I'm fine with going to a restaurant that's a hole in the wall, so long as the food is good. If it's true to the culture that it comes from, I'm all about it. Take me there. You can, matter of fact, take me there before you take me to the fancy spot, because I really hate going to a place that has, a beautiful view and the food is trash. That's important to me. So, what kind of pace um, does your nervous system like? I like it sort of a medium. I want to live in the medium pace, and we visit the slow pace and the high pace from time to time. But I live in the medium pace. If that makes sense. Do you prefer nature or city energy? How important is community for you? What type of a community do you have around you? And how often do you see them? Because I love community, but I'm also good by myself. Like, I can, as a person who's a writer, I can sit literally for days and not see nobody, not speak to nobody, and be totally fine. But maybe once a week, once every other week, I might share lunch with somebody, share a phone call with a person who lives, with a friend who lives in another part of the world. And, of course, we can't share lunch together, but we can do a Zoom call together, right? Um, what kind of daily rhythm helps you think clearly? You know what? I need something that I learned a long time ago. Thailand was the first, well, maybe the second, because I did spend some time in Dubai before I moved to Thailand. But when I moved to Thailand, I moved to Chiang Mai, which is a city in the north. And there's a lot of the electric wires, the bundles of wires hanging all over the place. And I don't know, call me weird, but that sort of living around those bundled wires actually feels like nails on a chalkboard to me. There's something about living around all of this stuff that's plugged in that sort of pisses my body off, if I can say that. Um, which is why I was really happy when I found this village that was sort of off. Oh, it's not off grid, because it was certainly on grid, but like it was a separated space area of town. I don't know what the name of it, but it was within Chiang Mai. It was on the outskirts of Chiang Mai, I guess. And I got in and out using Grab, or what Americans know is Uber. Um, yeah, so I had a place that was like, it was a regular apartment. It did not have a kitchen, though. That particular place that I lived in didn't have a kitchen, but but it was like way in the back of this deeply wooded area. And it was a place that was being built by a lot of young Thai artists and creative people who were just, building small ecosystems, small businesses of some places were really beautiful. Like I remember there was one place, it, um, it was like a glass house, and they had painted it all sorts of floral colors, and they put these flowers like everywhere. And it had these, romantic decor that with like tablecloths with, flowers all over it, and all of the plates were beautifully decorated with, beautiful flowers, and it was in a glass house, like literal glass house, ceiling to floor, glass. Um, Same thing with a cafe that I went there. And the glass house had air conditioning in there, and I would stay there all day. I was the only one in there. But it also part of the cafe where they had the seating was in a treehouse. And so you can climb up the ladder, and it was a large treehouse. And they had maybe 10 tables out there in the treehouse. 10, small tables, so you can maybe have two, three, four people at each table in the treehouse. And that sort of added to trying to keep the place cool. But, at the time I couldn't deal with all of that. I needed to be inside with on the couch, in some air conditioning. But it was beautiful. And I didn't know that these places in the world existed until I got there. Which is why it's so important to be able to go out and travel and see new things. Like you'll learn that different cultures actually prioritize different things. Like in America, we prioritize efficiency, um, getting stuff quick. They'll find a motif that sort of works and sort of, copy and paste and call that a brand, which is fine, you know. Um, but I learned in other places where a lot of the businesses are a reflection of the individual who created it. Um, they prioritize beauty. They prioritize health. They prioritize you sitting down and taking a load off your feet. The even like the cakes. You can sit down with a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and even that, just like even that was really beautiful. The um the containers, the teapots that they would put the hot water and whatever type of tea you had in was really beautiful. The teas when they would, mix it, and like if you've ever had what is that? What is that? It's like it's called butterfly tea, and it starts off with like this indigo-ish, indigo blue type of a color. And then you add a little bit of a lime juice to it, and it turns this beautiful lavender color, this light lavender, and it's actually absolutely gorgeous. And they prioritize the experience of having tea. You don't get that in America. You just don't get that in America. And so that's the type of life I like having. Um, Here in Mexico, I have learned that I really love local chocolate. Chocolate is a thing, is the thing. Teas, Let's see, tea, it depends on what it is. Like if it's a fresh tea, they prioritize fresh tea. So like getting fresh mint leaves and putting that in hot water. That'll be, or fresh ginger. Um, Box tea, not so much. They don't really care about that. But fresh herbs in the tea, which I love. And having cacao. Sitting down to have cacao is an experience here in Mexico that I really love. And there's a cafe here. It's a chain called Ah Cacao. And I actually just went there today and I had a brownie. It's so thick and rich and a little bit fudgy, not cakey at all, but it has a very deep cacao flavor that's so good. And it's sweet, but not overly sweet. It doesn't it doesn't overpower the flavor of the cacao, is what I'm saying. That's what I want. I want that. That's the type of rhythm that I want. What kind of environment supports your creativity? And all of these things, they all support my creativity. When I'm in spaces where people can appreciate what it is that they have local to them, that makes me think about what is it that I have locally available to me to improve my quality of life, to improve my creativity, to improve how it is that I'm doing things, or maybe to preserve what it is that I've been doing. To think about within my own culture I want to be able to preserve as well. Um, and so one of the greatest gifts of living abroad for me has been the time and the space to observe myself, to notice things like, when do I feel energized or feel creatively alive? When I feel drained, that's a good, um, you know, you should be able to notice this because a lot of times in the US, when we feel drained, that's just the day. That's just a regular part. You go to work and you come back drained, and we think that that's normal. And I'm not saying that people don't work hard, but when I work hard now, I don't always feel drained, but I actually, it's a good, I feel like I've had a good day of work. I got a lot of stuff done. I've said what I wanted to say, and I feel good about it. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm drained. It means, my body is tired. I can lay down and rest. But when you feel drained, that means you ain't got nothing left. And a lot of times these corporations, they want to work you until you're drained. That's why your hair is falling out. That's why you're gaining weight. That's why, you don't feel like cooking anything at the end of the day because they took everything. You ain't got nothing left. You got nothing left for real because you're drained. Um, and what kind of surroundings support my thinking and my writing? For a lot of you, if you're still working a regular job, and you have your job that you need to do to be able to support the kind of lifestyle that you have, right? And for a lot of you, you say you want to be able to write books. You want to be able to have time to think. You have to have time to think in order to write. You need space somewhere in the day to be able to think in order to be able to write. Those things go together. You need time to sit down and read things that inspire you. I don't know anybody who writes prolifically and doesn't have time and space to be able to read as well. You need time and space to be able to do these things. But because you gave everything to your boss, you can't. You never get to those projects. And so those observations really start to shape the way that you design your life going forward. So I ask you, what do you actually need in order to thrive? Instead of building your life around what your job allows, what's available in your city, um, what your family expects of you, what your society says is normal. Um, what is it that you need to be able to build your life around? Um, what do you need to push you forward in the next decade of your life? And so, I think anyway, that this is a really powerful question to be able to ask yourself. Now we can actually start to think about what is it that we need to thrive instead of just get by to the next day. And so if you really want to explore this for yourself, I have a few questions. You can write them down. I invite you to write them down, and actually spend some time with journaling. For those of you who want to build a journaling habit, this is a great place to start. Ask yourself some real questions. Give yourself 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Pick one question at a time, 10 minutes. Number one, in what environments do I feel most alive and creative? In what environments do I feel most alive and creative? Number two, what daily rhythm allows me to do my best thinking and work? What daily rhythm allows me to do my best thinking and work? Number three, what kind of community do I need around me to feel supported? What kind of community do I need around me to feel supported? Two more questions. Number four, what kinds of places or experiences consistently expand my thinking? What kinds of places or experiences consistently expand my thinking? And then number five, if I could design my life intentionally for the next 10 years, what would it actually look like? Last time, if I could design my life intentionally for the next 10 years, what would it actually look like? And so those are the 5 questions that I invite you to sit down and start thinking about, right? I'm going to actually put them in maybe I'll put them in the description, or in the description, and maybe even in the comments. And if you want to share an answer to one or all of the questions in the comments, you're welcome to do so. I would love to be able to read your answers. So, these are the type of questions that I explore with women in my Design the Decade strategic sessions. They are a month long. We meet once a week over a month, and we talk about these big questions. What are the big things that you are surrounding yourself with? Are you thinking about big things like you want to write a book? Do you want to speak publicly somewhere? Do you want to share ideas? Do you want to redesign how you live and work? It's not a life coaching session, but to be able to decide what's the big project you want to be able to, what's the big project of your life that you're interested in creating, and how is that moving the vision of your life for the next 10 years forward? And so all of this that I just talked about today, what is it that you are inspired by? What do you need to thrive rather than just survive? Because you need to be able to have, you need to be, you need to have the life of your dreams in order to move those projects forward. And you may not get them all, you may not have the life of your dreams starting out, but you need to at least have the vision for that. It's the vision that pulls you forward. You don't sit and wait for the dream life to show up in your lap and then think that everything else just sort of falls into place. If you want to be a New York Times bestseller, or if you just want to sell 1 million copies of your books independently, if you want to do a TED Talk or speak on corporate stages, or any other big thing that you want to be able to do where you are communicating your idea, you're teaching a framework that is based on your core values as a human. It's the vision for that that pulls you forward. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm offering. But before you even come to me to do those month-long sessions, I do offer 20-minute free strategic clarity sessions. And that's just, that's just a meet and greet for us to be able to sit down and you get to express what your vision for your big project is. And we can just sort of figure out if we're a good match or not during this 20-minute session. So it's simply a conversation to be able to explore where you are now, what you're feeling pulled toward, and whether working together actually makes any sense. And so if you want to do that, I will have a link to the strategic clarity session in the description box. You can go ahead and click on that and sign up for a 20-minute session. And that's all I got. That's it. That's all I got. Oh, that was a lot. I'm gonna get back to eating my dinner because it's late already, and I still got a few things that I need to do before I go to bed that I probably should have gotten done earlier, but I didn't. But here we are. It's okay. We'll get it done. So thank you for hanging out. I will see you tomorrow. Peace.